We've stressed throughout why good documentation is important. Now let's explicitly consider the consequences of poor documentation. In short, bad documentation can adversely affect patient care, legal outcomes, and your professional reputation. From a patient care perspective, if your documentation is inaccurate or insufficient, it can lead to mistakes in treatment. For example, if you forget to document a known allergy and the patient can't speak later, the hospital might unknowingly give a medication that causes an allergic reaction. Or if you administered a certain drug but didn't write it down or documented the wrong dose, the ER might either repeat it unnecessarily or be unaware of a critical detail. Inadequate patient care documentation can have real clinical consequences, as important information might not be communicated. Remember, your PCR is often the first piece of information the next provider reads. If key info is missing or wrong, the patient could literally suffer for it. Legally, we've already seen how poor documentation opens you up to liability. EMS providers have been taken to court and even lost cases due in part to sloppy reports. Lawyers will scrutinize your PCR if something went wrong. Any deviation, ambiguity, or omission can and will be exploited. For instance, not documenting something as simple as a patient's vomit or not clearly recording a vital sign could become a focus in court. They will question, did the provider even check this? Additionally, a poorly written report that is full of gaps or errors makes it easier for others to allege that your care was substandard. A jury might equate a disorganized, error-filled report with incompetence or negligence. On the other hand, a well-documented report can be your best defense, showing that you were thorough and followed protocols. Your professional reputation is also on the line. Within your organization and among the hospital staff, you will develop a reputation based on many things, and documentation is one of them. If you frequently turn in PCRs that are incomplete or have mistakes, colleagues may view you as careless. Your supervisors might start checking your work more often, or you might be passed over for promotions or special positions if they can't trust you with paperwork. This can erode trust. Conversely, if you consistently produce high-quality reports, it showcases your professionalism and attention to detail. Also consider that EMS documentation is part of being a healthcare professional. Completing paperwork and reports is part of the job, not an optional add-on. There's a saying in EMS, if it is not documented, it was not done. This emphasizes that from a legal and QA standpoint, if you didn't write it down, you might as well have not done it. So you could have given the best care in the world, but if your PCR doesn't reflect it, you won't get credit for it, and might even get in trouble for not doing it. One study noted that failure to document initial findings was correlated with poorer outcomes later, underscoring that documentation is tied to patient results. Poor documentation can also hinder quality improvement efforts. If you and others are not documenting well, your agency can't learn from cases or justify needs. It's harder to advocate for better protocols or equipment if the data is lacking or unreliable. On a larger scale, garbage data in means garbage data out. If reports are bad, the research and system decisions based on them will be flawed. Finally, let's be blunt. You can lose your certification or job over documentation issues, not just falsification, which we will cover next. But even repeated negligent documentation could result in disciplinary action. In extreme cases, if a patient is harmed and your poor documentation contributed, you might face a lawsuit for negligence. As a professional, you have an ethical duty to document as part of patient care. Skipping it or doing it poorly is essentially a dereliction of duty. If you struggle with writing or language, please seek help. Many EMS providers for whom writing doesn't come naturally have improved with practice, mentorship, or even short courses on technical writing. It's worth the effort. Ask for feedback on your PCs from a supervisor or experienced partner. Over time, you'll get more efficient too. Even the best of us can make errors in documentation. Maybe you wrote down the wrong medication dose or forgot to include a detail. It's important to know how to properly correct errors. And even more importantly, we must discuss falsification of records, which is a major issue in our profession. We are a profession that is built on trust, and those who knowingly falsify records have no place in it. Correcting errors. If you discover a mistake in your PCR, perhaps while still working on it but you have already given turnover or shortly after finishing it, do not erase or obliterate it. For paper PCRs, the standard method is to draw a single line through the error, write the correction nearby, and then initial and date it. This keeps the original entry visible but marked as corrected and adds the new info. For electronic PCRS, it varies by system. Usually, once a report is locked and/or submitted, you can't directly edit it without creating an addendum or late entry. Follow your agency's protocol. Typically, you would create an addendum with the new information, which is time-stamped when you add it. If the report is still open, just edit the field, but many systems keep an audit log of changes. The key principles are: note the date and time of any revision and the reason for the correction. Never try to secretly alter a report after the fact. Also, never discard or destroy the original report or original portion with the error. The original is a legal document. Any changes must be supplemental, not in place of the original. Only the person who wrote the original report or who made the error should be making the correction if possible. You wouldn't want someone else editing your report, and likewise, don't alter someone else's documentation. If a supervisor has authority to edit, like to fix a billing code, it should be done in a transparent way. Always follow your agency's protocol for making corrections. They might require notifying a supervisor and jointly writing an amendment. The bottom line is to maintain honesty and transparency in corrections. Falsification. This is deliberately writing false information or tampering with a report to deceive. It is absolutely unethical and illegal. Falsifying a PCR can and should lead to immediate termination, loss of certification or licensure, and even criminal charges in some cases. Examples of falsification include documenting vital signs you never took, saying you gave a medication or treatment that you did not, saying you assessed something you did not, altering times to cover up a late response, or writing a narrative that deviates from what actually happened. It might be tempting to fill in blanks or make a report look better, but the risks are enormous, and it violates the trust placed in us. A single incident of record falsification can end your career. We have real-world cautionary tales. In one case, two paramedics in Massachusetts walked a patient downstairs despite protocol saying he should be carried. They then lied in their report claiming they used a stair chair. Unfortunately, the patient's family witnessed the truth. The falsification led to both medics being fired and criminally charged, and a lawsuit that settled for $1 million. Another case in New York, paramedics encountered a patient with a DNR and chose not to resuscitate, but then faked the report to say they performed interventions they actually hadn't. When a supervisor noticed inconsistencies, those medics were charged with crimes for filing false documents. These cases underline that falsifying a medical record is taken extremely seriously. It's considered fraud, and in some contexts, even akin to perjury if that document is used in legal proceedings. Even minor seeming falsifications, like making up vital signs because you forgot to take them or don't want to take the time, or copying an old assessment from a previous call, are dangerous. Not only could they harm the patient because subsequent care might be based on false info, but if caught, you're done. Modern EPCRs and QA processes are quite good at catching inconsistencies too. There's always a digital trail. For example, if you claim in a report you were on scene at 1 o'clock, but GPS or dispatch data shows you arrived at 1:07, that discrepancy could flag questions of honesty. Ethically, falsification is betrayal of patient trust and professional integrity. We are obliged to report truthfully, even if the truth is we made a mistake or missed something. It's better to admit an error with an honest correction than to cover it up with a lie. A lie in the chart can snowball into legal charges of fraud or negligence, and will almost certainly cost you your certification if discovered. So to wrap up, treat the PCR as the legal document it is at all times. If you make an error, correct it following proper procedures, and never falsify information. The risks like job loss, lawsuits, and criminal charges far outweigh any perceived benefit of hiding a mistake or making yourself look better. In conclusion, our documentation must be truthful, timely, and thorough. By adhering to these principles, you fulfill your legal and ethical responsibilities, contribute to patient safety, and protect your career. EMS documentation can seem tedious, but it is a vital part of the care we provide. Good documentation is good patient care, and it's the mark of a true healthcare professional. Always strive for accuracy, completeness, and honesty in every report you write. And thank you so much for joining me for these documentation presentations. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask.